the fateful day to begins. It was a gray, restless Thursday in late October, the sort of day when the Seattle sky threatens rain, but can't quite decide, leaving the world in limbo, half light, half shadow, as if everything's caught between what was and what could still happen. I remember standing at my kitchen window, wrapping both hands around that chipped blue mug my old college roommate gave me, and letting the almost cold coffee sit heavy on my tongue. Everything in my body screamed that this day would be different, though I didn't yet know why. Maybe it was the way my phone vibrated insistently on the counter, or maybe it was just the silent hush before a storm.
Or I swear I will.
I am Michelle Anderson, 31 years old, firstborn daughter of the Anderson family, a name that still opens doors in certain neighborhoods north of the city, but has become more burden than blessing for me. Despite growing up in a sprawling house overlooking Lake Washington, my childhood felt colder than the drizzle outside. My younger sister, Grace, always quick to laugh, quick with secrets, quicker still to hold a grudge, was the sunniest patch in those long, overcast years. Or so I thought. That morning, I actually felt almost hopeful. I just landed a freelance project after months of unstable gigs. Dad had mentioned planning a family dinner. Just us girls, he'd said. A rare thing since Mom passed. A fragile olive branch, maybe, from people who ran out of words long ago. As I scrolled through emails, bills, and half-hearted invitations to pretend networking events, I replayed old memories in my mind. Grace and I as kids, racing paper boats in the backyard fountain, whispering in the dark about escaping this gold-plated cage.
Dispatch, we're
even as
securing the south
adulthood
end.
scattered us.
K9 is sweeping
Jobs,
the area now.
boyfriends, different coasts. We always found our way back to each other. The spell broke when I finally checked the text messages I'd been avoiding. First, a simple one from Grace. "Big news today. Don't freak out." I almost laughed. Grace had always courted drama, but something in the brevity of that note sent a chill across my skin. Within minutes, a second message. This time from Aunt Linda. "Call me. It's urgent. It's about the family trust." My chest tightened. The Anderson Trust, a fortune built from 3 generations.
You seem
of
uncomfortable.
lumber, real estate,
There's
and
no AC in
ruthless
here, just the
ambition,
truth.
was a topic best left alone. A strange static filled my ears as I paced my tiny living room, nerves buzzing. I tried to shake it off, focusing on the outside world, the slow crawl of traffic on East Lake Avenue, the distant wail of a ferry horn. The Anderson name never really left me alone, even miles from my parents' house. The old rumors and whispered betrayals seemed to echo down every hallway. I should have sensed something bigger was in motion, but I kept telling myself this was just another family squabble. I didn't know then that my entire life was about to change in the space of a single morning. When I made that phone call, when I heard Aunt Linda's trembling voice, and when she told me that Grace was involved in something serious, I could feel the ground shifting under me. I had no clue just how far the rift between my sister and me had grown. All I knew was that nothing in my carefully managed world would ever be the same after this Thursday. The light and shadow of sisterhood. Growing up, the thread between Grace and me felt unbreakable, spun from a million inside jokes and whispered secrets. She was 2 years younger, but somehow she always seemed a step ahead. Quicker to spot trouble, quicker to forgive it. Our bedrooms were connected by a hidden passage Mom once built as a birthday surprise. A secret tunnel for midnight escapes with cookies and flashlights. That little corridor was our world, the place we plotted against parental tyranny, dreamed about lives far from the shadows of the Anderson estate, and comforted each other when monsters, real or imagined, loomed close. Grace was light on her feet, shining her curiosity into every dark corner. She loved theater. In high school, she'd practice lines at the dinner table, roping me in as the unwilling villain or sidekick. I always played along, because with her, the world was just a little bit wilder and a whole lot brighter. We were different, where I pulled inward, cataloging my worries and hopes in secret notebooks. She exploded everything out into the world. But somehow, we fit. She covered for my missed curfews. I wrote her English papers. We survived summer camps, family road trips, and a dozen crashing Thanksgiving feasts, always finding shared refuge under the table or behind the garage after things got loud. But every bond, no matter how golden, holds a shadow. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't jealousy. She inherited Mom's laughter, that sunbeam charm, while I was the responsible one. Praised for sense, but rarely for spark. Sometimes, Grace's warmth burned too bright, pulling all the oxygen out of a room. Still, whenever life knocked her down, failed auditions, broken hearts, she'd seek me out, her big brown eyes daring me to comfort her, in spite of everything. I always did. She was my little sister after all. College drew us apart. Her to New York,
measuring the
me
print
staying
now,
close to Seattle.
appears to be an Air Max
Each
sole
of us
pattern,
building new circles
29
and stories.
centimeters exactly.
Still, we kept in touch. At first every day, then weekly. Then only when crisis hit. Every reunion tried, and sometimes failed, to capture that girlhood magic. When Mom died, we spent hours huddled together, ignoring everyone else, aching for a world that didn't exist anymore. I remember thinking, if nothing else survives, at least we have each other. How naive that feels now. Even the brightest bonds can cast the deepest shadows, and the cracks don't always show until you step right through them. The unthinkable betrayal. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always crash in with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it creeps in, quiet as the shadow of
The
dust,
timeline is wrong.
soft
Wait.
as a whispered secret.
What if the motive isn't
you
revenge?
wish you'd never
It's
heard.
simpler. It has
If
to
I'm
be
honest,
him. It was
I
him
didn't
all
see it
along.
coming. Not from Grace, not from the girl who, in every memory worth keeping, is laughing on the other half of the bed or leaning into my arms after another heartbreak. But that's the trick about families. It's not always outsiders who sharpen the knives. The weeks leading up to that day were a blur. Court filings, suspicious questions
They moved the
from
money
old
already.
family advisors,
I told you this would
and the
happen if we
mounting
waited.
sense at
Get me
every
the judge's
family
number
dinner
right now.
that something was being rehearsed
The cuticle
behind
pattern
closed
suggests
doors.
dyed hair.
Dad was more
Caucasian
nervous
male,
than usual.
likely mid-20s.
Aunt Linda
we
wore
should run
new
a
jewelry
mitochondrial
and
DNA
kept
sequence.
mentioning change. Grace, meanwhile, kept dodging calls, claiming she was busy with auditions. I chalked it up to tension about the trust, never once suspecting the storm she was preparing to unleash. Here's how it began. On the morning of my 30th birthday, instead of flowers or a call, I received a knock at my door. Two strangers in crisp suits handed me a sheaf of papers heavy enough to bruise a table. Anderson vs. Anderson.
Wait, if we
embossed in
cross-reference
cold
the phone records
legal
with the
font.
Port Authority logs,
The top
yes,
line
that's
accused
it.
me
He
of
wasn't in the
embezzling
city, he
funds
was on the water.
from the family holdings. My name, my social security number, my signature, tangled with things I never touched. I called Dad in a panic. He didn't answer. It was Aunt Linda who finally told me to get a good lawyer and keep my head down. In all the confusion and hurt, it was days before I saw Grace's name, right there, beneath the black letter accusing me, filed with her own hand. It was like falling through ice. I'd been angry with her before, over stupid boys or missed birthdays. But this was different. This was designed to ruin me. The betrayal came with paperwork, court dates, polite nods from strangers who'd known me since I was 5.
This
Every
is the
time I
final
showed my
report.
face at the club,
The cause is
people
clear,
whispered.
detailed on
Every
page
phone
42.
call from old friends
I've
grew
highlighted
shorter.
the contributing factors.
Even my own father
I
sounded
saw him with the
resigned.
package. He
We
said the
have
drop
to
is
let the
midnight at
lawyers
the old
handle
warehouse.
this. The harder
didn't
I
hear
looked
this
for
from
an
me.
explanation, the less sense it made. There were no missing funds. I'd spent the last year scraping by on contract gigs, struggling to pay the rent. Besides, Grace always hated numbers. She was never in those board meetings. It wasn't until I talked to Michael Chu, the family's longtime accountant, recently forced into early retirement, that the full, ugly picture emerged. Grace had struck a deal. If she provided the Anderson attorneys with evidence, manufactured if
I'm
needed,
sorry, I had
pinning
to
me
leave.
for the missing
Don't look
money,
for me.
she'd
Be
inherit
safe.
outright the controlling share of the trust. Grandpa had structured the will to pit us against each other, and Grace had chosen her side. My world went silent. I spent nights awake with anger burning in my chest. How had she done it? How had I not noticed her pulling away, or the strange withdrawals from old family accounts I never knew she had access to? Shame bloomed with every headline. Heiress accused of fraud. Anderson family rift worsens. Friends stopped answering texts. Clients gently backed away. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunted by the memories we grew up cherishing. Yet beneath the panic, something bitter and necessary took root. For the first time, I stopped trying to explain myself. To Grace, to my father, to anyone. I started collecting proof. Emails, receipts, whispered tips from old staffers, and the confessions of a cousin who'd seen Grace meeting late at night with one of Grandpa's sleazier lawyers. I met people in shadowed corners of coffee shops and paid for information in favors and old secrets. Little by little, I pieced together a story far uglier than I'd imagined. One where Grace played everyone, not just me, to claim a prize she thought she deserved. I confronted her once, outside court. Why? I remember saying. Why do this? She just shrugged. You always got everything first, Michelle. This was mine. You can't be mad at me for wanting it enough to fight. But what she'd done was more than a fight. It was the unmaking of a lifetime's trust. Still, even as the walls closed in, I found a strange resolve. I refused to run, refused to give her the victory
This evidence
of my
places
silence.
you at the scene, sir.
If I was going down, it would be screaming the truth.
You must be joking.
And so I began
Is
planning.
that the best you have?
The unpicking of her lies would have to be public and irreversible. The family, the lawyers, the entire city would hear the story. Not as Anderson's spin, but from me. I wasn't sure yet how, but I would make my stand at the
Respectfully,
event
Detective,
that bound us
I must
all.
deny these
the
allegations.
reading of the will.
I had
Those
nothing to
first
do with
few
it.
weeks were agony. I felt every loss. My sister, my name, the scaffold of privilege that had seemed so secure. But as my anger cooled, clarity arrived. Grace may have set this fire, but I would walk through it. I rebuilt my plan in darkness, gathering allies, rehearsing every word I'd say. I learned who could be bribed, who could be shamed, who cared about justice,
Leave me
and
alone.
who only about their invitations to the next gala. By the time the invitations for the will reading arrived, thick, cream paper with the Anderson monogram, I was ready. The trust lawyer's face would be the same pale mask he always wore. My father's eyes would slide past me, searching for a daughter he no longer recognized. And Grace, dressed in conquest, would flash me that half smile, confident the world was hers. What she didn't know, I was coming for the truth. And this time, I would not be quiet. White nights swallowing anger. Those weeks after the accusation were a blur of sleepless nights and unspoken rage. Sleep became impossible. My mind was a kettle set to boil, always on the spool of what had been taken from me and what I refused to lose. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see Grace as a little girl, sleep-tousled and grinning, asking if monsters were real.
They know where the
answer,
drop is.
I
You have to get there
realized,
before midnight
as I
or she's gone.
gripped my sheets in the darkness, was yes. They lived inside the people we trusted most. My apartment, already too quiet, felt like a prison. I'd spend hours in the dark, staring at the city lights, replaying conversations with Grace. Was there a missed sign? A question I should have asked. My phone was both lifeline and torment. Every notification might be a new blow or a new clue. Friends, uneasy, drifted away. Even Dad's brief emails grew colder. A list of legal reminders, not comfort. Aunt Linda called sometimes. Voice taught. Michelle, you have to fight this. Don't let them rewrite your story. Her loyalty was a lifeline. But even that began to fray when the pressure mounted. The first night, I seriously contemplated running away, packing my car and driving until the mountains swallowed me. I realized that Grace had stolen more than money.
Hello there.
She'd stolen
That's
the
a nice
narrative
drawing you have.
of my life. I couldn't let that stand. The anger brewed into something sharper, a resolve. I started collecting everything. Bank records, emails between staffers, scraps of information buried in old family files. I met with Michael Chu,
Can you tell me what happened
the
after you left
accountant
the apartment?
Grandpa once trusted.
I don't remember.
He was bitter,
He just
wary,
kept saying,
but after some coaxing,
I can't do this.
he helped me trace a pattern. Transfers, shell accounts, all linked back to Grace and the schemes of Grandpa's
They have nothing
fixer.
concrete, Counselor.
My days
it's all
were spent in
circumstantial.
lawyers'
I understand,
offices.
Robert.
My nights
We'll file the
hunched
motion
over
to suppress
spreadsheets,
first thing.
staring at cryptic ledgers. I became my own detective. The internet was my accomplice. Public records my bread and butter. One night, in a haze, I realized how much of my childhood had vanished in paperwork and fear. Yet the more I lost, the more obsessed I became with reclaiming it, no matter the cost. Every time I wanted to call Grace, to scream, or beg for an explanation, I stopped myself. That was the old Michelle. The new me needed to stay cold, calculating. I worked out timelines, cross-referenced emails,
Attention
paid for background
passengers.
searches.
Flight 707 to
Each
Dubai
night
is now
ended with
boarding at
insomnia.
gate 15.
My
All
thoughts
remaining
racing,
passengers, please
heart
proceed to the
pounding
gate.
against the pillow.
We need to focus on this
I
grid square
remember
right here,
Grace
near the old
weeping
mill.
at Mom's
The elevation
funeral.
changes rapidly.
What
The
about
way
the
her
access
hands
road?
It's
shook.
too exposed.
I
Stick to the
wondered
ridgeline.
what kind
Move
of
now.
grief drove a person to betray their own blood for an old man's approval or cash. It made me angry for her as well as for myself. By the third week, new rumors circled. Michelle's the villain. Michelle's greedy. Michelle's lying. The city's socialites turned cold. But through the fog of judgment, I found allies. A cousin who'd overheard Grace and Grandpa's fixer late at night. A former housekeeper who'd noticed strange bank statements.
Master
Some evidence I gathered was circumstantial,
the gift.
some
Thank you, sir.
incontrovertible. It became clear I wasn't just fighting
Here are the
for
offshore
trust.
accounts. It's
I was
all there.
clawing back the meaning of
This is
my
exactly
name.
what we needed.
And,
Thank
I
you.
suppose, my mother's memory as well. Panic simmered beneath the surface. What if nobody believed me? What if winning meant destroying
Your
Grace
Honor, the evidence
forever?
clearly shows a
What would
pattern
become
of
of
abusive
Dad?
behavior.
Left with two
Robert knew
daughters,
exactly what he was
locked
doing
in
when he
open
transferred
war.
those assets.
Some white nights ended with me sobbing into my
I
pillow.
don't care what he said. I want it
Some
handled
with me
tonight.
spitting
Do
curses
you understand
at
me?
the ceiling.
Tonight. Do
But
it
all
now.
of them ended with my
It's okay,
resolve
baby.
burning brighter.
I've got
In
you.
the isolation of those weeks,
Nobody is gonna
I
hurt you
learned
again.
what it feels like to need justice
promise.
more than comfort. Each document I found was another stitch, binding together the evidence I would unleash when the moment was right.
Just let her go.
I was
She has
terrified,
nothing to do with this.
But I was ready.
I'll do anything. Just
I was
tell
no
me where
longer
she
a
is.
silent victim. It was time to become the author of my own story. The fateful party. The invitation arrived on thick, cream-colored stationery, the kind reserved for weddings, galas, and, ironically, final reckonings. The Anderson crest was pressed into the seal, heavy with intent, announcing an evening that would draw our fractured family together again, whether we wanted it or not. In the past, these dinners had meant long tables, silverware polished until
Sign
it
here
blinded,
and initial
and a
pages 3
waltz
through
of small
7.
talk between people
Make sure the date
who
is
privately
correct.
despised each other, but knew how to perform for a crowd. But this one was different. This one had an edge. For days leading up to it, my nerves were shot. I cycled through anxiety and grim determination, alternating between wondering how I could survive an evening under my family's scrutinizing gaze and rehearsing exactly what I would say when my moment
It is truly
inevitably
an honor to
arrived.
see so many
The
distinguished
blue
faces here
velvet
tonight.
dress I chose
To
that
the
night
success of this
wasn't my
venture,
most
and to
elegant,
many more years of
but I
prosperity.
wanted armor,
What
not
exactly
attention.
did you see right here?
In the deep,
Are you
cool
sure this is
blue,
it?
I felt
That's it.
invisible,
See that paint transfer right there?
protected, almost like a child
Here,
hiding
take it.
under a
It has
blanket
everything you need.
during a thunderstorm.
He's watching me. I gotta go now.
Still, nothing could shield me from the pounding of my own heart as I pulled into the driveway of the old Mercer Hill estate. The house looked unchanged from my childhood, though that was part of the illusion the Andersons wove best. The hedges were trimmed to geometric perfection, the lights in every parlor window glowing a soft gold, a performance of warmth that any in-the-know guest would recognize as staged. Still, nostalgia crept in. The stone lions, the echoing columns, the memory of cold floors under my feet on Christmas morning. All of it sharpened into ache the moment I stepped inside. Olivia, my father's latest house manager, greeted me with a perfectly trained smile that
Where did
slipped
you see
only
this
slightly
lighter?
when
I
she
know you
realized who
recognize
I
it.
was. Welcome home, Miss Anderson. I couldn't
never
help
seen
but
that before.
wonder if she was in on the whispers, too. As guests trickled in, the tension in the air mounted, delicious and dreadful all at once. A
I told you
tapestry
this would
of
happen.
nervous laughter,
Don't you
clinking
dare
glasses,
walk away from me.
and subtle
We
glances.
are done.
My father stood near the fireplace, obituary stiff in his tuxedo, nursing a bourbon with eyes that never quite met mine. Grace arrived, fashionably late, dramatic as always, in an emerald gown that set off her skin and her intentions both.
Initiate
Behind
the asset
her,
freeze on the Northern
our Aunt
Orion
Linda
accounts.
was
I
storm
repeat,
red
all
in
funds
silk,
associated with the
moving
suspect's
through the
offshore
crowd
holdings must be
with the
secured within the
authoritative
hour.
grace of a woman determined to keep up appearances no matter what was brewing. Underneath, the estate's great hall flickered with candlelight, and every chandelier sparkled in anticipation, as if the house itself sensed the storm approaching. Staff moved through the crowd, silent as shadows, trays balanced with hors d'oeuvres, the
I like
average
that.
Anderson heir
that
would
one, that
barely taste. As cousins, advisors,
It's a pattern.
lawyers,
The keywords
and
match.
estranged family friends spread through the space, I tried to stay invisible, clinging to the shadows cast by the marble banisters, wishing for anonymity. I exchanged stiff pleasantries with distant aunts and dodged questions from
I
old
swear,
family friends
I told him the
who
exact
remembered
same
me
thing right
from
before
the
it
days
happened.
when I was merely
He should have
the
listened.
diligent one, rather than the center of a scandal. All the while, I scanned the room for allies and threats, cataloging every sidelong glance, every snatch of whispered conversation that might signal an impending betrayal, or, just maybe,
I
a
finally
hidden
feel safe,
hand
Mom.
willing to
You
help
are
me.
safe now,
The room
sweetie.
buzzed with
Everything
rumors
is going to be
about
just
me,
fine.
about Grace, about the trust, about who might leave the party richer or exiled. Dinner was less a meal than a war conducted in whispers and careful posturing. The table stretched on forever, weights of expectation resting comfortable on each of the heavy place settings. Our butler, Jameson, who'd been with the family long enough to know the difference between real and performed courtesy, poured the wine as if sensing
You know the
it might
rules.
be used soon to quench tempers rather than thirst. My father, seated at the head, welcomed everyone with predictable words about honor, legacy, moving forward, and the importance of
Fairy
family
tales could
unity.
bleed into
Even
real
as
life.
he spoke unity, the only thing tying us together that night was the magnetic pull of conflict. Grace and I exchanged exactly two
I don't
glances,
care how you do it, just
both
fix this
loaded
mess.
with history
The
and
deal is
accusation.
closing right now, and if they
She was
find out,
radiant
we're
but
finished.
brittle, That familiar smile of hers
To a very
stretched a
successful
little
night.
too tight.
Indeed,
A mask
and
as
to
much
your
for
continued
herself
success.
as for the assembled guests. I caught her briefly
So how is
circling
the
the room with
investigator finding
Michael,
time for romance?
Grandpa's
Yes,
old lawyer,
surely you need balance
who
in life,
barely
even with all this
disguised
success.
his distaste
Gentlemen, you are
for the
too
entire
kind.
proceedings.
a
Aunt
beautiful
Linda
day
kept
on
intercepting
campus.
my
You must
attempts
be
at
the
private
investigator.
conversation
Yes, thank you for meeting
with
me here. I
well-timed
appreciate
toasts,
it.
each grander than the last, as if she could drown discord in champagne and nostalgia. As the meal wound on, course after course, mostly untouched, the tension crescendoed. Each attempt at small talk was an effort to paper over the roots of the night's true agenda. The air became thick, each laugh too loud, every silence too dense. I remember pushing roasted duck around my plate, my appetite non-existent, every muscle in my
Look, I
body
told you,
tense.
the growth metrics are
For the
completely
moment,
organic.
the facade
we
would
optimize the
shatter.
workflow, that's all.
All around
it's
me,
just good business
I
strategy,
watched
nothing
decades
manipulated.
of family dynamics play out. Uncle Richard telling off-color stories, probably to distract from his own pending divorce. Cousins whispering about which foundation would get cut if the trust was depleted. Grandma's nurse, hired after her last fall, wincing every time someone mentioned Grandpa's will. There was a strange comfort in the dysfunction, as if we'd all signed a secret
See how
pact
bright the flames
to perform
are,
our
Leo?
respective roles.
It's much better than
Halfway
the cold
through
outside.
dessert, a towering confection
Look at
that
that,
no
a
one
6.
seemed able to enjoy. The old Anderson lawyer
You
finally
always get
stood
lucky on this game.
and cleared his throat. Every fork paused in midair. Every conversation ground to dust. And then the reading of the will began, as formal and chilling as a court verdict. The lawyer's voice, flat, practiced, utterly without warmth, carried over the table. He listed clauses, foundations, trusts, and bequests, every word bristling with possibility and threat. My hands clutched the edge of the table as I realized the wording was deliberately vague. Doors open for manipulation, cracks already widening within the family's crumbling unity. Some guests wore expressions of hope, others of greed or dread. Grace looked perfectly composed on the outside, but her hands trembled beneath the tablecloth. I knew her tells better than anyone. Aunt Linda shot me warning glances, as though expecting me to do something reckless. The lawyer's recitation made it clear. The Anderson fortune would consolidate and power would shift, depending on what proof the family could present. Proof of loyalty, of innocence, or perhaps, in my case, proof of betrayal or its absence. And then, like a conductor signaling the crescendo, my name broke the hush. Ms. Michelle Anderson, if you have any statements or evidence pertaining to the current dispute, you may present them now in accordance with the decedent's wishes. All eyes hunted for mine, and I felt exposed under their collective scrutiny. This was the moment I'd rehearsed for weeks, the moment my whole life seemed to teeter between ruin and the desperate hope of reclaiming my truth. I stood, my chair rasping against marble, in the suddenly suffocating silence. Every part of me trembled, not with fear, but from the volcanic force of everything I had bottled up, years of frustration, loss, and the singular pain of Grace's betrayal. For the briefest moment, I looked at her, my sister, once my closest ally, now my nemesis. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe.
This has
Or
everything
simply
we need.
the dawning understanding
Memorize it and
that
destroy
her
it when you
game
can.
was
Okay.
about to unravel.
Thank you.
I spoke clearly, voice ringing against
Did you
the
know
high
about the
ceiling.
fraud, sir?
I have proof of my innocence,
What do you say to
of
the
where the
victims?
missing funds really went, and of who orchestrated the lies against me. Slowly, I revealed what weeks of sleepless nights and desperate investigation had unearthed. Bank transfers, forged documents, emails between Grace and Grandpa's fixer. The late-night meetings witnessed by staff no one thought would talk. Each revelation was a stone in the collapse of Grace's story. Every word I spoke seemed to crack the air, The family's
All
composure
units, armed
splintered
robbery in
as
progress.
the
Suspects
room
fleeing in a black
erupted
sedan.
into
Dispatch,
chaos.
I'm initiating pursuit.
Aunt Linda
Heading north on the
gasped.
101. Requesting
My
backup.
father's glass
Everything
slipped
all right,
from
James?
his hand,
You've barely touched your
splattering
food.
bourbon
I'm fine.
and ice
Just
across
enjoying the
his lap.
ambiance.
Grace, always ready for the spotlight, could only stare, jaw slack, as murmurs and then shouts broke out among the assembled relatives. The god-awful tension shattered. In its place came the cacophony of self-preservation, accusations, desperate explanations. But I didn't flinch. I finished what I had come to say, laying the last scrap of evidence on the table. This is the truth, I said. My truth. Judge me as you will, but I won't be silent anymore. The aftermath was a blur, a din of raised voices, lawyers huddling, old friends
Down there, the
quietly
alley,
slipping
past
out
the
back
neon
doors.
sign. He had the
What
case.
kept me upright was a strange, defiant clarity. I remember thinking, no matter what judgment they render, I've taken back my story. My father's face, lined and tired, was unreadable. Grace, not the brilliant, envied golden child anymore, but a person suddenly very small, could scarcely meet my gaze. We stood for a long moment in the noise, a whole childhood balanced between us, and then she turned away. I didn't know if there would ever be forgiveness or even truce, but in that instant, surrounded by the wreckage of a legacy, in the silence following a truth finally told, I felt something almost like peace. I'd survived the fire, and in doing so, set myself free, whatever the cost. That night, as the guests departed and the old house returned to its emptiness, I walked out beneath the shadow of those stone lions for what I imagined would be the last time. The city waited beyond, indifferent and brimming with possibility. I closed my eyes, drew in the cold, damp air,
We know you were here
and
when you left.
realized
Just
I
tell
could
us which way
finally
you went.
breathe. The truth
can't.
unveiled. The days
They
and
said they'd
hours
hurt my family.
before the truth came out felt like living on a knife's edge. Imagine an orchestra before the final crescendo. Anxiety thrumming beneath every interaction. The weight of what I knew pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. I rehearsed my words in the mirror, voice trembling at first, then gaining confidence. My anger and need for justice distilling into a fierce clarity. Every detail had become a talisman for me. The forged signatures, the shell accounts, the hushed conversations, and cryptic emails. The mounting evidence wasn't just paperwork. It was the proof that I hadn't lost my grip on reality, no matter how much the family tried to isolate me. On the morning of the will reading, I could hardly eat. I stared into my untouched breakfast, the silver spoon trembling in my hand. My phone buzzed with reminders from my lawyer. Be calm. Stick to the facts. Do not let emotions derail you. Easy for him to say. I was about to go to war with my own blood. As the afternoon sun began to fade, the Anderson estate came alive with orchestrated chaos. Luxury cars lined the drive. Neighbors peered through fence slats, eager for a glimpse of the family drama. Inside, a maze
Difficult.
of polished floors
I
and
remember
gilded
the
pictures
face, but the
reflected
rest
the
is-
ghosts of
it's all
happier
a blur
years.
now.
Staff bustled about, straightening napkins, lighting candles, and whispering in corners. Each action and act in the silent play leading up to our little family apocalypse. The will reading, though technically a formality,
This is
had
our
turned
suspect.
into an event.
He attacked 3
Rumor
officers
and
already.
expectation
I want
building
every available unit
until it
looking for him
nearly
right now.
suffocated me. The great hall was a body of tension. My father's eyes were cold and unreadable. Grace lingered near the far window,
I know what
clutching a
happened.
wine glass as if it were a talisman. I caught her gaze only once before the ceremony began, and in that brief moment, I saw the smallest flicker of doubt flutter across her face. Did she regret what she'd done, or just fear what would come next? The family lawyer cleared his throat and began reading aloud the clauses. each word echoing off marble and memory. I felt my nerves vibrate with each sentence. Assets, trusts, conditions, requirements, all so clinical and final. My name was mentioned, then
You're looking
Grace's,
real nice in that suit,
and then
counselor.
the room quieted. The moment was at hand. The clause,
Where you headed?
which, according to our grandfather's infamous wit, allowed any party to present material evidence affecting the disposition of the trust. I stood, my chair scraping back like thunder. All eyes turned to me. The traitor in waiting, the accused, the black sheep who'd either be branded forever or, if I was lucky, claw back a shred of dignity. My throat was dry. I drew a shaky breath and began to speak. I presented my evidence meticulously, just as I'd rehearsed. Printed bank statements, timelines, notated emails, and a thick folder containing affidavits and testimony from Michael Chu and other former staff. I spoke not as the wounded older sister, but as a prosecutor. Each point built on the last. A careful narrative pieced together from the wreckage of the last months. How funds had been siphoned, how my signature had been forged, how investigators traced
get out of the way.
withdrawals
Everybody clear the hall now.
through shell corporations to accounts controlled, ultimately by Grace. I laid out motive and opportunity. I read aloud emails
I heard they
where
found the
Grandpa's
note right
fixer,
after he left.
in the language of an old-school operator, admitted to helping
So
secure
tell me exactly
young
why your
Grace's
blood is on
future
this folder,
at
Mr.
my
Davis.
expense.
We know you were
The
there.
room fell utterly silent. No one moved. Even my father looked stricken, face a mask of disbelief and denial, battling for dominance. Grace stared at me, face flushed, the glass trembling in her hand. Aunt Linda's eyes glistened with tears. In that moment, I saw the fortress of secrets the Andersons had built begin to crumble. Questions began. My cousin asked, almost desperately, if there was a mistake. My father demanded to see the documents himself. All pretense of impartiality gone. Grace opened her mouth, then shut it, knuckles white on the tablecloth. She tried at first to deny everything. Said I was lying, doctoring evidence, desperate to pin the family's ruin on anyone but myself. Her voice, sharp and panicked, barely echoed in the cavernous room. I held fast. I countered each denial with another fact, another document, another signature. Michael Chu himself stood and confirmed my story, voice quiet but
Take
unshakable.
a good look at that picture.
The
That's
lawyer,
you, isn't it?
seeing the mountain of proof,
We have witnesses
nodded with
placing you
grave
right there.
finality. The trust's future, my future, Grace's, tilted on a knife's edge. For what felt like hours, the hall devolved into shouts and tears. Some relatives defended Grace out of loyalty. Others demanded justice. My father's stoicism cracked. He stared at Grace as though seeing a stranger. I felt almost outside myself. Calm, cold, unwavering, even as old dreams died around me. Then, something incredible happened. Grace stopped protesting. She slumped in her seat and told the truth in a voice so small I barely recognized it. She confessed, yes, she'd let Grandpa's fixer show her how to move the money. Yes, she forged my signature. Yes, she'd been desperate. Not for the cash exactly, but for recognition, for certainty that she mattered more than a footnote in the Anderson legacy. No triumph, only resignation. The relief that flooded me wasn't
He
what I
lied about
expected.
everything.
It wasn't victory or gloating, but a bone-deep exhaustion. A sense that the fight was finally, painfully, over. I looked at my family, my father grieving, Anna, my cousin weeping quietly, old friends and enemies alike shaken to their core. Even the house seemed different. No longer a stage, but a scene of reckoning. The legal process that followed ran its
Shame on
course.
you, we want
The
justice.
trust would
It
be
doesn't match the
divided anew.
database.
Grace's share dramatically
Check
reduced.
the degradation pattern
And
again.
mine
It has to be
returned with
connected.
caveats. There was talk of formal charges, but ultimately, my father settled for exile. Not legal, but social. The kind of banishment the Andersons reserved for those who'd fallen from grace. Aunt Linda held my hand afterward, whispering apologies for not seeing the truth sooner. Later, as evening crept in and guests spilled out
He was
into
right
the
there by
starless
the gym
Seattle
door. I
night,
swear I saw him.
I moved through the
We have
halls
to go faster.
like a
I know,
ghost,
just keep moving. We're
both
almost
a
at the car.
survivor and a witness. My name was, for now, clear. But the price of truth had been so high. Grace didn't look at me as she left. My father barely nodded goodbye. The Anderson fortune endured, but the illusion of family did not. In the solitude after, I sat in the old library and wept. I wept for the childhood lost, for the bonds broken, for a sister I once would have done anything to save. The truth had set me free, but it had set fire to everything else. I wondered what my mother would have said if she'd still been alive, if she'd have counseled mercy or praised my determination. That night, as I stepped outside into the cool, damp air, I realized I was no longer fighting for acceptance or legacy. The city stretched before me, indifferent and unknowable. For the first time, my story belonged to no one but myself. I could finally imagine a future, a quiet one perhaps, but honest, and mine alone. That, I think, was what freedom truly meant. The
We know
reckoning
you were
and
there,
release.
Mr. Davies.
When I think back to that final
The
act,
security footage
what I
doesn't
now
lie.
call the reckoning, I feel a kind of exhaustion that sinks deeper than bone, the kind that seeps into your marrow, altering the rhythm of your heart. There's a myth that truth brings triumph. In reality, standing on the ashes of scorched legacies and shattered trust, what I felt most was an overwhelming sense of quiet. In the days after Grace's confession, the estate felt like a mausoleum, haunted by memories instead of people. If I closed my eyes, I could almost hear the echo of childhood laughter beneath the polished ceilings, see flashes of birthdays, holidays, and secrets traded by flashlight under velvet covers. Now, those echoes had nowhere to land. Dad's voice was a dull monotone, issuing arrangements and apologies with the flatness of exhaustion.
How could you be so
Aunt Linda
careless?
roamed the halls,
They are going to find
pausing
out
to
everything.
squeeze my
No, they
shoulder,
won't. Not if you just
but
keep
never
quiet.
quite managing eye contact. The staff kept their distance, moving with soft-footed compassion, as if worried any sudden sound might crumble the precious new peace. The next morning, I wandered into the kitchen, where sunlight pooled through glass
This is you
like
right
something
here.
benevolent.
This proves you were
For
there
the
at 10
first time
p.m.
in months,
No, I
the sky didn't look
wasn't.
threatening.
That's not me.
I brewed a cup of coffee, the act comforting in its ordinariness.
This is the police.
Alone,
Stop walking
I let the
and surrender
silence
peacefully.
settle over me, wondering what was left to salvage or rebuild now that the storm had passed. I stared at the house, a fortress I'd both hated and loved, wondering if I was ready to walk away for good. Letting go, I'm learning, is not a single gesture, but 1,000 small decisions. What keepsake to take, which pain to lay down, which future to trust. I went room by room, taking mental inventory of the Anderson inheritance. Not the kind counted in bank ledgers, but measured in recollections, regrets, and resilience. In Mom's old sitting room, I found a scarf she'd knit the winter before she passed. The memory of her hands, so sure and steady, stirred something deep inside me. I wrapped it around my shoulders, letting the familiar scent calm my battered nerves. In that moment, for the first time, I grieved not just the loss of my sister, but the loss of every version of myself I'd let this family shape. The dutiful daughter polishing her father's image, the silent older sibling swallowing
I told
fears
you I didn't
so the
do
younger
it. You
could
have to
shine.
believe me.
The woman
You're
who
watching
wanted
the
more
exits.
than the echo
I don't know how
of
much
someone
longer I can
else's
stay
plans.
here.
I thought about Grace, too, and the girl she might have become without all the sharp-edged games. I didn't hate her. Not really. Not anymore. I felt something closer to pity, a weary compassion for the ghosts that now
Come on,
shadowed
damn it!
both our lives. Still, I didn't call her. Some wounds, I realized, need time and distance more than sutures or speeches. The public fallout came next, though it was quieter than I imagined. The lawsuit faded from headlines within a week. My lawyer handled the settlements. The family's PR machine spun stories about misunderstandings and rebuilding trust. Much as I bristled at those lies, I couldn't bring myself to fight anymore. Let the world think what it would. I knew the truth, and that would have to be enough. I moved out of the family estate before the month ended, packing my life into the trunk of my car and a handful of cardboard boxes. I left behind the champagne flute,
The sweat on his
old
brow
trophies,
confirms it.
all the symbols
Keep the
of a
pressure on, he's
legacy
about to
that
confess.
never truly fit. Instead, I took what mattered. Mom's scarf, soft and blue as winter twilight. A collection of childhood letters Grace wrote from camp, each signed, "Your secret sister." The stack of notebooks where I drafted, then redrafted,
Can't do this
then
anymore.
ruined 100 versions of my life. I thought about what it would mean to start fresh. Seattle beckoned with its
Breaking
familiarity,
news tonight in the highly
but I found
publicized
myself
case.
driving
We
east
are learning new
instead,
details about
towards
the victim's
Spokane.
testimony, which could
the
change
winding
everything.
roads unspooling possibilities I hadn't considered
That's the
in
connection.
years. I rented a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a fire escape, perfect for stargazing. The habits of surveillance, the need to scan for whispers, to read the subtext in every glance, began to fade. Instead, I learned a quieter vigilance, one more concerned
Target is moving
with what
through the
made
central
me whole.
crowd, approaching
Freedom,
the carousel.
it turns
he
out,
looks nervous.
is not the
requesting
absence of
backup
pain.
at the east exit.
It's the presence of self-forgiveness. At first, I filled the hours with tasks, assembling bookshelves, hunting for secondhand furniture, learning how to cook something that wasn't a reheated memory. The ache that followed was soft, not sharp, a steady gnawing that, over time, made space for new joys. I signed on for a weekly writing class.
Nobody can
Content to
know.
be nobody's heir but my own. There, in a sunlit room above a coffee shop, I met people who knew me
The plan
not
is
as
set for
Michelle
midnight.
Anderson,
What if he
Scandal's
talks?
shadow, but as Michelle,
He
a
won't.
woman who loved words
made sure of that.
and wore sadness on her sleeve, like jewelry. Sometimes in the small hours, regret returned. I missed Grace's laughter, the cadence of her jokes when we were young, and everything felt reversible. I missed my father, though I suspected the person I mourned most was not him, but the idea of what our relationship could have been. I worried about him, alone in that mausoleum of pride, and pictured Grace vanished into the slipstream of anonymity, but I resisted the urge to chase them. Love, I realized, is not always rescue. It's sometimes letting go. If reconciliation was possible, it would come in its own time. I found meaning in ordinary things. The spring thaw, the solace of rain against my window, the slow, surprising comfort of self-discovery. Hiking on weekends, I let my anger seep into the soil and my hope bloom wild in its place. I volunteered at a shelter, and the small, daily acts of kindness felt
Welcome,
truer
honey.
and more lasting than any trust
Please
fund
have one.
could promise.
They're freshly baked.
One night,
Thank
after
you,
finishing my
Mrs.
first
Cohen.
short story in months,
They look
I
wonderful.
stared out at the city lights, tiny, insistent points burning against the dark. Each one, I thought, a testament to lives still unfolding, to the possibility of redemption and peace. The Anderson legacy wasn't mine to tend anymore, and that knowledge felt less like exile and more like absolution. My mother would have understood, I like to think. Her memory was never about the gold or the name, but about grace, the real kind.
Here's your change, sir.
The kind that holds steady when everything else buckles.
Move it along, we haven't
As
got all
for
day.
Grace, I heard from her once, months later.
Nah, it's
A plain
bagel.
envelope
Say it like
arrived
you
in the
mean it.
mail.
Bagel.
Inside,
Bagel.
a single page. I'm sorry for all of it.
Okay, so
I wish
that'll
it was
be,
different.
we'll burn that bridge
No
when we...
signature, but I recognized her looping
Oh,
hand.
I mean, cross
I
that one,
cried.
sorry.
Not for the apology,
I don't know why I even
but for the
bothered showing
child
up
hope
today. Everything
behind
just
it.
feels so
I
heavy.
wrote back, simply,
Anyway,
Here is
Maybe
your
one
change.
day, I tucked her note inside Mom's scarf, a second thread in the tapestry of release. What comes after ruin? Not erasure, but emergence.
Everything is fine,
I am not the
really.
sum of my family's secrets,
I
but
know,
the architect
I know. I have
of
to
my
stay
future.
strong for Mom and
I am
Dad.
scarred, not broken. What lingers now is not bitterness, but a clarity I never could have imagined, forged in sleepless nights in the agony of truth. As autumn curls the world gold again, I think of my mother's wisdom. Sometimes freedom isn't about running away.
This
It's
is
about
just the
choosing
beginning.
what to set down and what you're willing to carry into the unknown. I have chosen, and I am free.